Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here with these amazing speakers and panelists. I'm going to talk about how I scaled myself, which, as engineering, we talk a lot about how we scale our architecture and our software systems. So I thought, let me talk about how I scaled myself. All right, this is a brief career timeline. Just a bit about my background. I started in New York as a software developer. I've put in my own titles of what actually I was doing at each of these places, though it might mean completely different in different industries. I do appreciate the privilege of having had the chance of working in New York was because I could afford to do a master's there. But that's how my journey started. I was an analyst and then an intern and then an associate through the grad program at Morgan Stanley. Through the years, I started building an app framework that I started scaling. So I was scaling one application, then I started scaling a framework, which then became a platform very quickly. And I got the opportunity to also move to Mumbai with Morgan Stanley. That's where I'm from. So for personal reasons, I had to move, and I got the chance to do that. But it was a great opportunity to face off with the business, Asia business, and I spoke to a lot of my potential customers and understood what are their pain points and started building products around that. Then I would say what I was doing was a bit of being a tech lead manager, which is also managing people, but also being the most senior technical person in the team or teams that were starting to grow. And that's when I moved to London because it was again a personal move, but a good opportunity for me to run the team from the sweet spot of time zones across the globe. And then what I would say is, became like a principal role because I had now built the internal work management platform for Morgan Stanley, and I had teams across the globe using it, and more than 11,000 users out of the 60,000 employees were using it for managing the productivity internally. I also learned a lot about product management as we go, and I became what was a technical and product lead because it was easier to teach technical people product management than have the business people understand how to build a product. And now I am at Zoa. Prior to that, I was an engineering director at Trade.io. These are both startups, SaaS solutions. I would say I'm an engineering leader now. What I'm really doing is scaling cross-functional collaboration because that's what my core skill set has become, and I can talk a bit about that. Really exciting products that I was very passionate about, and hence I was leading the development at Tray. It's an iPaaS, an integration platform as a service, and Zoa is what was previously Bulb. It was one of the fastest growing startups in the UK as an energy supply company, and now we're building a SaaS solution that helps other energy companies become consumer companies. And I'm leading the web and native app development for Zoa. So obviously this required a lot of myths to be busted. I didn't just get there through hard work. It was also making sure that I'm questioning what I'm hearing all the time. One of them is don't stay in the company too long. I actually spent 10 years at Morgan Stanley. It was a decade. And that's because I was learning and growing. So that's really important. And I would say just focus on that and then decide when it's time to stay or time to go. I say, XYZ work is more exciting than ABC. You hear that a lot. You should be doing that if you want to be successful. Again, I would say align with your strengths, your passions, your values, and that's where your excitement and success lies. I didn't actually follow through on any of the advice I was getting while I was at Morgan Stanley. You can't switch industries easily is also what I got. Really, tech skills are transferable. So that's the benefit of actually working here. You can work in any industry. And I'm on this journey now, and it's exciting. You can't define your own role. It is, I would say, even in a large corporation where I went from, having 60,000 employees, finding something that was a real problem to be solved and solving that And now I'm in a startup with like 100 people, and it's still a scale up. I try and find what is it that needs to be solved, and I try and go and acquire the skills to do that. Sometimes it might mean taking a course on cloud computing. I'm trying to add AI to my list of skills now, so a bit of data science is what I'm trying to learn. What I wish I knew about leadership sooner. These are not concepts that are hopefully you may have already heard of them. They're fairly common now, but they have really impacted my career a lot. Just embracing servant leadership, which is really about how to have the people that are working in your teams the focus of how you manage them as well. So it's a really good way of learning that yourself. There's a lot of books around it. I've just put in a couple of them here. And the growth mindset is about making the shift from like knowing it all to like wanting to learn it all, and having a mindset that you can grow no matter what stage you are in or where you are at. I think that's very valuable, and I'm still learning that. This one is very close to my heart because I feel like I learn something about myself, every day at the startup. But your success really depends on how well you know yourself, and it's about becoming self-aware, and that's a never-ending process. This is something that one of the directors in that I had the privilege of working with shared with me and has stayed with me, is this triangle. Your career, your health, and your relationships. So your friends and family, your mental, spiritual health, and like your work. They're in a triangle. And you need to, at any point in time when you think about your career as a very long marathon, you want to think about what are you optimizing for. Like, how does that change over a period of time so that your triangle's in balance is one of the things I had to constantly think about through my career as well as I made those moves between countries as well. Debbie spoke about this. I've put this in here because I think it's very important to understand what the difference is between a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. And I would say there's this idea of having 5 to 7 people on your personal board of directors. You can have a look, it's a fairly common one. But at any point in time, I've always had at least one of each of these in my life. And the difference between them is like a coach is having your best interest in mind and is training you. Just like in a team sport, you have a coach. A mentor is someone who is more experienced than you and advises you based on their personal career. I think mentoring relationships can also be short-lived, and you can grow out of it depending on what you need. So I think it's very important to find a mentor who has experience in the challenge that you are currently facing and how to overcome that. And then a sponsor is someone who is in a position of authority typically, who can advocate for you when you're not in the room. And they are the one opening the doors and making introductions. All right, because this was about scaling, what didn't scale? Taking on more work without delegating, not knowing my values and not aligning with them. So I'll give you an example. I took ownership of 9 applications because I thought I'm just going to take on more work. That's how I'm going to grow. And I assumed the work will be of similar scale. It was not. And it was a very good example of when I had to pause and not take on anymore. And then about values, I believe in like one thing that's very core to me is how do I make things more efficient? That's how my brain works. And I just didn't think about automating stuff that I was doing all the time. And that really hit hard because I then started working for an automation platform eventually. And that was my journey. What did scale? And this is a bit about how we talk about scalability. Remove yourself as a bottleneck, right? And how do you do that? You create growth opportunities for people in your team and empower them to make decisions. So you're not the bottleneck on making decisions. So you are now helping your team, grow themselves and that way you were not the bottleneck, right? There was a point where every project had me as a as the buck stops here, and that was not helpful. Monitoring and observability. Blocking out time, I had to, at one point, look at how many streams of work I can handle, and I had to block some time out. And the number was 7. That was my threshold. I need more, and I can't do it. So it's worth doing that and seeing how much you can take on. Adding redundancy, just like we do in software architecture, right? Making sure that I'm not the only one who can speak about a particular topic, right? Having deputy leads and those basically at the whole time coaching and mentoring someone to take on my role, so then I can take on greater challenges. I was thinking about documentation as caching, and then I thought I was pushing it, but I did also make sure that I start documenting processes and then automating them so that it's available for someone to see what my, to essentially be a voice in the room even if I'm not there, because there's now a process that's documented and someone's looking at that. Also applies to code so that it's easy to understand and leave that code better than you found it as a developer is also something I hold true. Lastly, T-shaped careers. Not sure if you've heard of them, but if this is what my T-shape looks like. And I believe in that if you are starting early in your career, focus on the foundation of your T. And these are mine, right? So I've started developing them because I wanted to be an expert in a particular part. Technology is far and wide, and there's new things coming in all the time. But then once you have your foundation straight, then you can start thinking about peripheral skills that then become your top of your T. And then these are some of the things I added to then start working better across the stack and across people as well, right? Because these help in managing. And like I said, I'm trying to add AI now over here as a part of broadening the T. This is a personal story, so it's for inspiration. I think a lot of times I see frameworks being built out of people's personal stories, and I think what makes each individual good is very personal to that individual. So this is just for inspiration. It's not to say this is the path to growing or by any means I have mastered any kind of technique to scale each one, but it's about how you scale yourself, how you identify what your strengths are, and align your role with your passions eventually. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Do we have time for questions?
I've left my, yes, I'm getting a nod. Yes, we have time for questions.
Hello, thank you for your speech. It was very inspirational. So I have a question like how was the way when you started as engineer and you grew all the way up, and what struggles were on your way and how you dealt with it? Because growing is always like about challenges, so I'm very keen to hear that.
Yeah, I think firstly, did you there are different types of challenges that come up in your growth from an engineer. At first, I was when I first joined Morgan Stanley, I was given 40,000 lines of legacy code to say go understand it and try and build something new. I cannot forget that ever because that has stayed with me, and that was the struggle, like right from day one. Working with legacy code was really stressful, and then I had to find a way to create something new and create change in a place that was so archaic or set in the ways. So I had to do I had to get a lot of mentoring around how to prototype solutions and how to get close to the users who are going to use that. And I could not have done it otherwise, but I would just sit down with the operations users at Morgan Stanley and see how they do their day-to-day work, and then try and build something quickly that can improve their productivity through software, basically. The other challenge I had was also around managing incidents. So, how do I now, if I built a platform, try and support it and resolve them in time, and I had to build some skills around that. And I think the way I overcame that was through building very strong relationships with my peers, and also having, before going into every meeting where I'm proposing a new idea or I'm trying to do incident management in a better way, I would try and speak with someone who is a bit more experienced than me and run the idea with them, past them, and say, what do you think about this? And then actually have the confidence to go in. A lot of my mentors were actually have been men as well. So I think one of the challenges I was also facing was that there weren't enough women who were in the room when I was talking about architecture and I'm trying to propose something. And I think that for me, the way I had to overcome that was to look outside as well, the company. But at the same time, I would say that there's no harm in having a good mix of mentors. Men can be great mentors as well. So someone who's been through your journey. I would say that at each stage, the level of challenges differ. And now at this stage, when you reach say at the point where you're managing managers, it's a wholly different challenge than when I was as an engineer. So I think what I do is try and block out a lot of strategic thinking time for my own self in the day. Every day I have at least 1 hour of doing that, so I can reflect at all times and monitor what's actually going on with my career. So that's, I think I spoke a lot, but I hope that was helpful in some way.
Oh, no. There's a test here, right? How far can we go from one question to the next?
Thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much for sharing your journey. It was really insightful. Something I want to ask is for early careers, say anywhere between 3 to 5 years, when you look at the T-shape in today's time, what would you look at? Because you had some things there, right? You had product management and agile.
Yeah.
What do you look at the structure like? What do you think people should focus on trying to build that T-shape?
I think
to be relevant.
Definitely try and see what you are. Do you know the Ikigai diagram? What you're good at, what's a real problem to solve, right? And what you enjoy. And try and find the intersection of that Venn diagram for you, and see what are the strengths that you want to build on top of that the company that you're working in also needs, and you enjoy doing. And that could be anything right now. It's a very challenging time in the industry, I would say, and I don't think that any of the formulas that worked back in the day are relevant now. But I do think that there are really concrete challenges at work, and there are skills to be learned still in software engineering, and it could be any of those, right? And when you think about building even full stack skills, this could be front end or your back end or your data engineering and pipelines and things like that. So it depends on it's a very personal question is what I would say.